Professor Brain Brown's research shows that vulnerability fosters good emotional and mental health. It is a sign of courage. We become more resilient and brave when we embrace who we truly are and what we are feeling. The Vulnerable Scientist podcast is a space for scientists to tell their honest and authentic stories. I am your host, Sarah Nyakeri, who happens to be a scientist, informal science communicator, and I help scientists create personal websites. If you want to support this show, go to www.patreon.com/thevulnerable-scientist. You can also follow this podcast on all social media platforms at TV Scientist Pod. Why did you say you don't miss it?
Because it's a crazy roller coaster, to be honest. And I think I was really surprised when I was writing this book. So I interviewed 15 friends of mine, and I was so surprised at how relatable, at how like we were all doing different PhDs, but just the journey, just the roller coaster nature of it, just the fact that everyone felt a certain kind of way and felt the roller coaster of PhD was interesting. Yeah.
And it's all the same.
It takes you through highs. Like sometimes, occasionally, especially if you attend a conference and you present your research, or you present in a seminar, and people are like, oh, that's really interesting work, blah, blah, and you feel so good. And then some days you are in the lab, you have some results or experiments are failing, and you're like, what am I doing here? And you doubt if it's gonna help the world even.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Vulnerable Scientist podcast. This is your host Sarah Nyakeri, and today I have Gladys, or Dr. Gladys Ngetich, with me, who will be our guest. Hi Gladys.
Hi Sarah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited for the podcast today and the conversation that we'll have.
Could you introduce yourself the way you would like your name to be said?
Oh, obviously, because we are talking about PhD and research, let's go with Dr. Gladys Ngetich. That would be good. But you can call me Gladys.
Okay, Gladys. Introduce yourself. Who are you and what do you do currently?
I'm currently working as a postdoctoral researcher at MIT. My current area of research is eco-friendly fuels for small satellites. And before MIT, I did my PhD at the University of Oxford from 2015 to 2019 December. And that time I was researching cooling technologies for aircraft engines. Before that, I did my undergrad and all the other levels of academic stages in Kenya, where I was born and raised.
Talking of born and raised, where were you born and raised? Exactly.
Born and raised in Nakuru County, Keringet Sub-County, in a village called Amalo.
Amalo
village, yes.
Amalo.
Oh. Amalo. Amalo.
Oh, Amalo village.
Amalo village, yes.
How was it growing up?
Although someone was telling me the name has changed, I'm not sure. But anyway, what I know is Amalo village.
Okay. How was it growing up there?
How was it? I would say interesting and fun. I have so much memories growing up, but mostly of playing. I grew up after 4 brothers, and you can imagine like all sorts of games, all sorts of competition, all sorts of childhood, those kind of games. It was really fun. I have so many good memories from that time.
Oh, nice. Could you tell us how this journey started? Like, how did you get to where you are right now? Just from, I don't know, where you want to start, maybe high school, maybe whatever time. How did that spark in science start?
Let me start from primary school.
Okay.
So my primary school from 1997 to 2004. I did my KCP in 2004. And I have to say, by the time I was sitting for my KCP, I was I was just a normal kid. And normal kid, I mean, I didn't know what life was, and I think most of the decisions of my future and everything else was made by my parents.
Mm.
Mostly my mom. My dad my dad worked away from home for a very long time. And so I feel like my mom was literally running my life and my siblings' lives in terms of what time to study, what high school we should be thinking about. And so I remember I'd scored 298 marks in that
Mm.
KCP out of 500. Yeah, and I couldn't get a very good school. The admission letters that I received were just from average schools. And I remember my mom saying, "No, I think I think we should look for a better school."
Wait,
And she had,
were
sorry,
you a performer before that?
performer. No, no, that 298 marks. I was actually top three of my primary school.
Oh,
Yeah, and I would say I was performer in that sense if you contextualize the situation.
oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Yes,
Ah,
because
okay.
I was in a public primary school
In the village.
in the village, and so I was the star. I was actually the best girl.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
So your mom
so it was
said,
good performance. So
okay.
my mom was like, let's try this private. My mom had her eyes on private schools, the
Mm,
likes of these mission schools.
mm,
So we ended up doing interviews. So most of these private schools, they do, regardless of what you scored in your KCPE, you still have to do an admission test.
mhm.
And so we set out and I did an admission test at Roret Girls. I don't know if you know about Roret Girls in Kericho, and
Okay.
another school called Mercy Girls in Kipkelion.
I've heard
I
about.
ended up, so I failed in Roret. They were testing maths, English, and Kiswahili, and
Mm,
I was terrible in languages. So maths was my only savior. So
mm-hmm,
I barely passed the admission test at Mercy
mm,
Girls.
mm,
Finally got admission there. And I mean, the more I went up the academic ladder, I think the more, just like anyone else, I think the more you realize yourself, you realize the importance of education. But even still, even in high school, I don't think I knew exactly what I wanted to do in
mm,
my life or what my career would be, etc. But I
mm,
was just aiming to give my best and knowing that I got in the school knowing that it was a chance for me, having not passed very well. Most of my classmates had like 300, high 300 marks,
mm,
and I was coming in like one of the lowest. And so for me to get a chance in that school, it was a privilege. And
mm,
I like telling people so when someone was asking me what I think changed or what I think contributed, because from 298 Sarah, after 4 years, I left Masagals. I was the best, not only best in Masagals, and I'd actually broken the record. No one had ever scored 80 points since
mm,
the school was started.
mm.
And aside from that, I was the leading student in the whole of Kipkelion district in 2008
Wow.
KCSE. And people are asking me, what do you think caused that transformation
Mm,
from 298 marks to
to
80
80
points, A
points.
minus in 4 years?
Mm,
And number one on top of my list is gratitude. So for me, I got in Masagalt and I knew this was my alliance because it was the best school that my marks could give me.
mm,
And I think with that realization, all my teachers, like I adored them. And, and, um, and that kind of gave me, I think when you operate from a half full glass,
mm,
you unleash your potential because then you instead of looking at what is lacking in the school, personally I was seeing all the positive things that I had, and I knew I wouldn't have gotten if it wasn't for that test, given the marks that I scored. But
mm.
anyway,
Wait,
towards the end of high school,
sorry, I'll have to
no
interrupt you.
worries, no worries.
I find this interesting. Remember my reaction when I heard that you had 298.
Yes.
In my head, I thought those are very low marks according to what I was expecting in my head, because I've been brought
Mm-hmm.
up in Nairobi where 298 was not good marks. It was average marks. It's just average, above average marks.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm,
considering the setup and what was available for you and what you could do with your resources, this is what was good. And it's not about the marks here, what I'm seeing here, because if you got 298 marks, you carried that same spirit of hard work to Maasai girls and
Mercy.
Maasai girls.
Mercy. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
like Maasai the name.
Huruma. Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes.
So you
Yes.
carried that same spirit, same, but now with better resources, I'm imagining, and you got the higher points. So I don't know if it's true, but I'm thinking that there wasn't much difference in that. It's just that the resources that were available for you before is how, like, that's the best you could get in terms of what was available for you in your primary school. And since you had more resources with high school, you're still the same. It's just that the resources were the same, were better. Now you could get better marks. It's not like you actually improved. According to me, I don't know. Is it true?
Oh, absolutely. I think you've just hit the nail on the head. It's the same. But I would also say maybe also and I have to say the support as well. You can imagine, like, if you join, and especially at that age when you are very conscious about your image and whatever, like you join. I was one of, I don't know, one of maybe only 5 who had less than 300 marks, and you can imagine the way my colleagues who had more than 380 marks, the way they used to view me. So I just wanted to say it's also the belief in my teachers, and most importantly my parents, like, who kept saying. So I remember my mom, for instance. So Sarah, with 298, to surprise you even further, I had 45% in English. So that's a fail for sure. But I remember my mom saying, you scored this because you were taught in Kekale in primary school, and so you didn't practice to speak the language, and that's okay. And I want to highlight, the reason I'm highlighting that is for a kid in primary school and for a kid in high school. I say a kid because they're still kids, and I was a kid, and most of my self-confidence was improved or emphasized by my teachers and my parents. And I think that's really key. Because in as much as while I was in class and my classmates used to laugh at me the way I used to speak with Kalenjin accent, I didn't know how to read and all that. It kind of it hit my confidence a bit. But seeing my mom or seeing my teacher saying, you got this because of this, and you have a lot of potential, and actually believing in me, I think it's another flavor in the equation. But you were right in terms of I continued with the same hard work, but now with more resources.
Yeah, so the resources here, it's like the more support and the more, like, there's a gas that comes with people looking down on you. I feel like people who get such things, it's either they use it as a fuel or use it to, go down. And most people who use it as a fuel usually really do well.
I agree.
It's
totally.
like So the other thing I've noticed is your mom. She was the spearhead in this. Like, she was trying to make her daughter get the best in terms of school, high school, right? And also the other thing I've noticed when you're trying to interview for that school in Roviet, was it Roviet?
Roret is R-O-R-E-T.
Roret. Oh, okay.
Roret.
Yeah, so I'm imagining when you're trying to get into this school and the I don't know, the score sheet that was used is your English, Swahili, and maths. You're good in maths, but you're not good in Swahili and English.
I'm very good in maths.
And Swahili and English. So as much as people say that science shouldn't be used across students to grade how good they are, I feel like also languages shouldn't be
like, I agree with you, Sarah.
Yes, because
but I'm biased because I was really poor in languages.
Me too, I was. That's why I think this is now a biased conversation, because I feel like
that's a caveat we should put out there.
Yes, we are being biased here, but I feel like there shouldn't be one way of gauging students of how good they are in terms of
Mm-hmm.
education, in terms of something. Like generally, you shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
like score people in the same spectrum. Probably they're good in this and not
Mm-hmm.
good in this, or good in this and not
Mm-hmm.
good in this. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
point out there. Like English and Swahili were more easier subjects in quotes, but you actually sucked in them at that time, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that you weren't a good student. It just means that it wasn't your strength at that time.
I know.
Okay,
But
sorry.
somehow I think when you get those low marks, if you get those low marks, it as a student, you know you failed because the results come and they say you failed. And I think you internalize that as a failure, that you are not good as a student. And you actually, I at that time, I don't think. I mean, right now in hindsight, I know I was good in other subjects,
Yeah.
except languages, and I should not have felt bad when I failed. But I felt
Yeah.
bad, and I felt like I was letting down my mom, who we were traveling like the whole day without food, trying to do
Oh.
interviews on the same day. So anyway, but you are very right. And I'm hoping actually, even on that topic, I'm hoping that CBC, the new curricula, I'm hoping that it's gonna fill those gaps in terms of seeing, in terms of not, the story of judging the fish flying and bird in swimming, like giving one test to judge all the students, and yet we have all we all
Different
have
people.
we are all diverse.
Yes.
Yeah, so hopefully CBC in Kenya, I think I hope it will fill that gap.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had cut you short when you had finished now your high school. Is there something you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
And you were the
Oh
best in
no, I was
district.
saying oh yes, I was saying, I had to slide. I had to say that I had to make sure that I was the best in district. But anyway, aside from
It's
bragging,
good to take up that, like it's because we're talking about moving from a low score in courts to
yeah,
a high school and being actually the best in your district. Like
yes,
let's take that credit. Like there's nothing
okay,
wrong with
I
that.
take that credit.
Okay.
I take the credit.
Okay.
But I think the main point was just to
Yeah.
highlight
Yeah.
how I like saying no condition is permanent unless you want it to be, and just to highlight the transformation. And I know that my teachers and my parents really contributed a lot in terms of building my confidence and telling me I had what it took to succeed. And I think I was trying to say this story, and I think that your question was, when did I get into science? And I wanted to say towards the end of high school, I was doing very well in sciences. I think we've talked about that. Sciences and maths, I was very good. Physics, maths, especially, were like my top two subjects in high school. And because of that, and I grew up after four brothers. All of them did STEM courses. Two pharmacists in the house, and mechanical engineer and a civil engineer. So the house was already like STEM, and it was biased towards STEM. They were talking about maths and sciences as very interesting subjects, and just by association, I gravitated towards STEM subjects, and mostly from that influence from my brothers. And so by the end, actually, by the time we were choosing courses, I personally knew I wanted to do engineering, and mechanical engineering in particular, because listening to my brother, civil engineer and mechanical engineer, I had known roughly what all these engineering courses entailed, and I had a bias towards mechanical, and that's how I chose. And I put down mechanical engineering as my first choice, and luckily I was called to do mechanical at JQuat.
Wait.
So that's
So
how my story into mechanical engineering started, and I'm here.
wait. You've mentioned that it was you chose STEM by association, and of course you're good at it.
Mm-hmm.
What would you have done if you're not in that environment, that STEM rich environment? Have you ever thought
Oh
about
my,
it?
that's very interesting. I've not thought about it actively, but I think I would have. I suppose, like many students, they choose to do. And at that time, I still emphasize that we are all kids in high school, and you actually don't know. Even when I was choosing mechanical engineering, I was choosing mechanical engineering based on the fact that I liked physics and maths. I had not thought so much about my career afterwards as a mechanical engineer, but I chose it based on the passion on the subject. And I think most of and association as well, like the fact that I knew roughly what the subjects my brothers were pursuing in colleges, blah blah. And I think most students, I feel like they choose based on that.
Yeah.
Now, to answer your question, if I didn't have that, it's very interesting. But I suppose I was very I don't know. I don't want to lie. I honestly don't know what I would have chosen. Maybe I would have, I don't know, maybe I would have chosen what my cousins chose, because I feel like there is also that influence and peer pressure. Yeah. But to be honest, I have no idea what I would have chosen to do.
I love that I asked that question and you had no idea. Like,
No, not a single idea.
All right, let's go to the experience that you had during your schooling years. Do you want to learn about the strategies for enrolling, thriving, and excelling in a PhD program? Dr. Gladys Ngetich has written a book on the PhD journey with lessons from various PhD students across the globe and from her lessons as an ex-Oxford PhD student. Dr. Gladys is now a postdoc researcher at MIT. For you to get a chance to get a free book, post your favorite podcast episode of the Vulnerable Scientist podcast on any social media account and tag the Vulnerable Scientist social media account with the hashtag the Vulnerable Scientist Book Giveaway. You can now pre-order the book on Amazon or as an ebook on Kindle, Kobo, Thalia, etc. You can get more information on this book on www.gladyschepkirui.com/books.